Laying concrete to control driver behaviour is something that councils know plenty about, and here's some examples around Canada Bay and the Inner West Council. First one, down around Timbrell Park, you can see there's lots of curbs built out here to stop drivers parking too close to this intersection, and also to force them to take the intersection as a T-junction rather than at an angle. And then a little bit further on, you can see there's also concrete islands coming out of the side street. Then when we get round to the bay, where there's some angled parking, you can see again there's blister curbs being put out to stop people parking in the wrong places. Now we can even go over the Inner West Council, and on Hawthorn Parade there's lots of islands like this to control how drivers enter and exit these roundabouts. And we could go right across the Canada Bay area and we could find curbs built out onto the roads all over the place to stop people either parking where they shouldn't park or taking corners in an unsafe manner. Now, so that should be it's a pretty well-known concept and one that really shouldn't have to explain to anyone on council. However, when it comes to pram ramps, where we access things like parks, etc., these blister curbs are just completely ignored, and that allows drivers to just park with absolute impunity across these ramps. And of course that's a real problem for people with disabilities, and I have seen people recently going around the bay running wheelchairs and around the Timbrell Park area in wheelchairs. You've also got a problem for parents with prams getting into and out of the park, where you've got cars that are either parked right across these ramps or part way across them or parked right up to them and impeding their sight lines. And then you've got elderly people with hip and knee problems who have to use these ramps because they can't get up and down the curbs. And of course you've got cyclists at the end. Not so much an issue for your mammals, your adult cyclists, but you try getting into and out of these parks with young children on bicycles or on scooters. It's an absolute nightmare. And if you've got cars parked right up against these ramps, it completely blocks your sight lines to the left and right, so you can't see the cars coming. Makes it quite unsafe. Now, so we should have at each of these pram ramps around parks blister curbs made out of concrete to push the cars back from the ramp 5 to 10 metres. I mean, we don't, at all intersections, you're not allowed to park within 10 metres of them. And council ticketed us plenty of times when we lived in Lancelot Street for parking within 10 metres of the intersection behind the school. So we know all about that. Why not treat pram ramps as an intersection as well, that you can't park 10 metres either side, giving plenty of visibility and making it safer. Now, what about access into Timbrell Park? And we've got the strategy. This is obviously aimed at the strategy for what we're doing with Timbrell Park. And one thing which is very important is foot access, pedestrian access, or non-vehicle access down to the park. And what I'm suggesting is at every intersection coming from the north down to Timbrell Park, there should be a pram ramp on the opposite side of the road. So every one of these streets that you come down, you can cross the road with a pram, on a bicycle, whatever, and you can safely get up the other side. And of course every single one of these should be protected by ramps. And look, ideally would even go as far as they do, the Dutch go, with their solution for safer sidewalks, which is continuous sidewalks. So if you really want to combine better facilities at Timbrell Park with your access strategy, then I think continuous sidewalks are the way to go. Now, of course, I can see this being very contentious because it's going to slow drivers down, but council's got to make a choice. Are you trying to promote physical activity, and for all ages and all abilities, or are you going to prioritise drivers and disincentivise people to walk or ride or scooter or run or even go to a park in a wheelchair, or even old people trying to go down there on Zimmer frames, etc., to get some fresh air. So anyway, I hope this gets included in the strategy, and instead of just thinking about facilities in the park, we should be thinking about, and people are going to the park to exercise a lot of the time. If you're willing to exercise in the park, you should also be willing to get some exercise walking to and from the park or riding to and from the park. This idea that we've got at the moment of people driving to the park parking and getting out of their car and doing some stuff and getting back in their car really seems to be a little bit bonkers, don't you think?